Welcome, all pregnant families, midwives or birth workers. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we will be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. This week on the podcast, we have Lauren and Dan. They share the shift in mindset they experienced when preparing for birth through the Transform Your Birth course. Lauren really enjoyed her birth, largely due to the incredible team of midwives from the birth centre and her student midwife. With Dan well prepared and providing loving and practical support, she stayed completely in labour land and experienced that beautiful high after birth. She goes on to have a long pushing stage, a little problem getting the placenta out, and a postpartum haemorrhage. However, with the wonderful team around her, she knew she was in the right place for them to manage this and stayed completely calm through these challenges. A perfect example of great preparation and a great team to manage whatever unfolds on the day. Enjoy.
Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. Most of the stories you will hear through this podcast are graduates of the Transform Your Birth workshop held in Canberra. Our Transform Your Birth Today course is now available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and includes all the wonderful wisdom of this course and live weekly catch-ups when you need it with our host, Tracy. For a little taste, please accept our pregnancy gift offer, which contains free the first few lessons and some essential wisdom for pregnancy. The link can be found in these show notes or visit transformyourbirth.com.au. And now for the episode.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It's another episode of the Transform Your Birth podcast. And I'm pretty excited today because we've got 3 people on the podcast. Lovely Lauren, her partner Dan, and little Orla. So if you're actually watching this, you're going to see how gorgeous this little 8-month-old Orla is. So you might hear some baby noises and that's all fine. But on the Transform Your Birth podcast, we're always trying to identify what we can learn, how we can prepare to change the way a labour unfolds. And having partners on is really powerful because we know that they're a total game changer. So having Lauren and Dan is wonderful. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. It's so nice to talk to you because I listened to all your podcasts before when I was pregnant before giving birth. So it's really nice.
Did you? Yeah, I think stories, the art of storytelling is really, we're storytelling creatures and stories are a powerful way to learn about birth. So let's check in on you both when you were pregnant. How were you feeling about your pregnancy? And I know you did the Transform Your Birth course, so you can let us know how that sort of helped you prepare.
Yeah, we're feeling really excited about pregnancy. I was a bit sick to start with for the first kind of 20 weeks. I was pretty nauseous all day long, which was a bit hard. But after that, things started to get a little bit easier. We did your course pretty early on, kind of around like the 26-week mark, I think, or maybe even 23 weeks or something really early. And that really helped me and I think Dan get our heads around what was to come and sort of the different physiological things that would happen and the hormones and everything.
Yeah. Were you feeling particularly nervous about the birth, Lauren, before you did?
I was at that point, I guess it's just such an unknown. And you just kind of hear about from everyone how painful it is and how scary it is. And but it was nice to do the course and kind of see how natural it is and how everything is happening for a reason.
Yeah. And Dan, how were you feeling prior to doing the course, like in your role as supporting lovely Lauren?
Yeah, look, I think I felt the same, a little bit apprehensive just because it was so unknown. I think, as a partner, if you haven't been through the process before, all you really know about it is what you either see in a movie or hear in terms of the stories that you're told by family, friends, and everyone's story is so different. So actually, the thing I was really excited about was learning a lot of the underpinning things because it can go in so many different ways. So understanding that base and where it could go and why was really helpful.
Yeah. So what you're describing there is just like the understanding of the system, the physiology, and how we can optimize the way we respond to birth and work with it, not against it. That's great.
Yeah, definitely how like the pain is for a reason, and
Yeah.
and it's natural, and it's not something to be scared of or to intervene in.
Yeah. So with the teachings then from the course, what were some of the turning points in your own thinking that really helped you to see it differently?
I think learning that it's not always just pain, that it's actually like tightenings and that contracting up of the muscles of the uterus. And I think the other big thing for me was learning about the hormone cycle, and if you fear the pain, that'll create a different hormone and that will make the pain worse, and learning to just embrace it and work with it. And I think the biggest thing was probably the breathing, because the breathing was just what kind of took me through the whole thing. And it just was my savior.
Yeah, the breath is a really interesting, well, I call it the top tool in the toolkit. It's a tool that goes with every other tool in the toolkit. And I'll tell you why, because it has a direct influence on your physiological response. And one of the things we teach about breathing, and there's a good episode in this podcast, I did an actual standalone episode on the breathing, so you can have a look at that if you're interested. But a lot of breathing techniques get taught that might be yogic techniques or some form of a technique. What I actually teach is not techniques as much as it is optimal physiological breathing in the way the body's designed to breathe to give you the most oxygen. When we can actually optimize our oxygen in the blood as well as carbon dioxide, we need carbon dioxide in the blood in order to make use of our oxygen. When we do that, we can get more out of each breath. And a well-oxygenated uterus and baby really does change the way women experience labour. And it sounds like that was one of your top tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go to Dan. Dan, what were the turning points in your own thinking within the birth where you started to see things differently? What really shifted your mindset?
Yeah, look, I think the big one for me was having the scientific underpinnings of where the pain comes from, and the tools that Lauren has naturally to deal with the pain too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of partners that want to, do the right thing and be involved and helpful, I think a lot of the thought process there is that the most helpful thing they can do is take pain away sometimes. That like you see someone you love in pain, so the natural reaction is to try and fix it.
Yeah.
And actually, having gone through the course and we were presented with some situations through the birth process where there was obvious pain, or not necessarily pain, but like pressure, as we talked about, and it was just a big experience. I knew that Lauren had what she needed to deal with it too. I didn't feel like I needed to take responsibility to step in and manage it for her or anything like that. It was just I got to sit there and watch it unfold, and it was amazing.
I love what you've said there. One of the biggest fears I think a lot of men have is seeing their partner in pain and seeing birth as something that's awful and to be overcome and to just get through so we can get on the other side and start parenting. But what you're describing there is just a shift in understanding of it is a big, intense event. And Lauren does have a lot of things, which then unloads you from feeling like you need to fix.
Yeah. I also had the practical things that we learned before. So I had like a list of things I could focus on. So it wasn't about, how do I manage the pain for Lauren anymore? It was about what can I do practically, like offer her a drink or encourage her to go to the toilet or something like that, where these are some things I can do to channel what would be undirected fear into something that was actually I'm contributing in a meaningful way. But
being supportive.
Being supportive,
Yeah, that's beautiful, because that just even framing it differently in your mind can help you to experience it differently. I often say to my fathers and other partners, when you see, it's very easy to think, oh, the pain, but actually what you're seeing is power. And I flip it. It's not I mean, even if it's painful, it's the most powerful state you'll ever see a woman in.
Yeah.
And to see it as something that's worthy and of value, that you then don't feel compelled to have to fix, and that you've then got your really clear role of what you can do very practically and to help her to find comfort, really does change things. And I imagine, Lauren, having Dan on board for you can take a bit of the load off you too. Is that what you
Absolutely.
experienced?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was my rock throughout the whole thing. Yeah, just was, you barely left my side, I think, only to like go and get me something if I asked for something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so he did all right, did he? What did you score him out of 10? Give him
100.
100 out of 10.
His hands when I was like holding them so tight.
Oh, you're looking good, Dan. She'll probably have more babies with you then.
I think another thing that we really like, we went into the course thinking like pretty naively, like, oh yeah, we just do what we're told in the hospital, but we learned a lot about advocating for ourselves and learning, you know, the benefits of not having like pain meds and stuff. And I came out really wanting to not have any pain meds.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't realize until your course about the whole, you know, cascade of interventions and how much it would affect the hormones and how much it could affect her or breastfeeding or just any of that.
Yeah, exactly. The pain meds can be useful under certain circumstances, but most of the time we don't need them. But it's helpful to understand that they actually do come at a cost. I don't tell you that. And it's important for people to know really what they are when they're making that choice, what they're actually really choosing, but also being open to them because they are a tool in the toolkit. But like you said, I mean, I find most women get through birth and they don't even think about them.
Yeah, I never, the whole birth, I had in my plan or my preferences for no one to offer them to me, that just, you know, if I asked for them, then they could, but I didn't want it to be offered. And in the whole time, it never even came into my mind as an option. Like it just didn't cross my mind as a thought. So
why do you think that was?
I think because I've done so many of the like meditations and the practices that you have, like the recordings, and like I just was focusing on those affirmations and just focusing so intensely on the breathing that I was just like in that zone, and it wasn't part of that zone, so it didn't come into my mind.
You were completely surrendered to Labour land.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. It's good for people to hear this, those listening to the podcast, because we get so many messages out in the world that, have the drugs, you're going to need it. And you know, that's not actually true. You may not need it. And to say that to people could be setting them up because they could have reactions to the drugs.
Yeah, and I know I've had morphine before when I was in hospital, and it really knocked me out. Like, and I just didn't miss it.
Yeah, that's good. All right, then. Well, let's talk about the day. Leading up to the day, I think there was a bit of pressure on you to induce. Tell us a little bit about that, how that played.
Yeah. Not really pressure, but I guess because I got to 41 weeks, there was a little bit of the time, clock ticking. Yeah, I was in the birth center, and at around, I had a 41-week appointment, and obviously like the whole week beforehand I'd been doing all the things to try to bring labor on, like I was doing the curb walking and the stair walking and eating the dates and the tea and everything.
No pressure.
Yeah. But yeah, the 41-week appointment, I went in for a stretch and sweep. I was a bit apprehensive whether or not to do one because I know that's an intervention as well. But yeah, like they gave me the option, and I thought, you know, it's kind of the lowest risk intervention to try to get things started. And so, you know, I'd had some cramping the night before, and like a little bit of like stabbing in the cervix kind of pain that night. So I thought something must be going on. So they had a look, and I was already 2 centimeters dilated, and I was already down to 1 centimeter effaced, and the baby was, well, it was like 1+1 station. So she was like right in the pelvis, like so low.
Yeah.
So they did the stretch and sweep, and then I basically had like cramps all that night. And then the next day, just lots of cramping, nausea. And I don't know, that next day I felt really emotional. I was crying a lot. And really? I don't know if that was just because like labor was kicking off. But yeah, I was very emotional that day. And then I had another appointment at 41+2 and had another stretch and sweep. That morning I had lots of tightenings, and I couldn't really sleep from like 3 till 6 in the morning because it was just lots of tightenings and cramping, and nothing like too intense, but just like a really bad period pain. So I had another stretch and sweep, and they told me I was at 3 to 4 centimeters and 0.5 centimeter effaced, and that I was in early labor already. After that stretch and sweep, the cramping turned to what I would call like light contractions. Like it was a lot different. It was very like a lot stronger than it was before. And like we went out for lunch and I could not go into the restaurant. I just like sat in the car and I was like, oh, I can just get takeaway. So we got takeaway, and then I just laid in bed that afternoon and rested. Went to bed at about 9 p.m. that night. And then at about 11 o'clock, I was like, okay, I think these are contractions now. These are like proper contractions. So I put on my affirmations, like the birthing tracks that you'd made, and just kind of breathed through them in bed till about midnight. And then I thought, okay, they're getting pretty regular now. I'll start timing them. I started timing them. Got to about 1:30 and I thought, okay, I need to go get my birth combs. So like ducked out and got my combs and was in bed like doing the squeezing, and Dan was still asleep next to me.
Dan slept through that, did he? Bless him.
Yeah, like I wasn't really making much noise yet. I was just breathing. I just let him sleep until then. And then at about 3:30, I thought, okay, I can't lay down anymore. I need to get up. I need to move. Like I couldn't stay still. So I thought, okay, it's time to get up. We got the room ready. And
can I just come in there? Yeah. What Lauren's describing is actually really, really wise. She's paced herself really well there. When labour starts at night, it can be very exciting, and it is, the prospect that baby's on the way can be the sort of thing that keeps you up all night because you just want to see what happens, and you might let yourself watch a movie or get distracted. But it's really important that you pace yourself, because the biggest challenge a woman has in labour is she doesn't know how long she's going to be in labour for. And so if you do go into labour at night, just having time to rest, to lie down, even having a bath, because baths can slow labour down, can just give you that opportunity to rest and conserve your energy. So that was really wise. And keeping your partner, not tiring out your partner too early too, which is, it was really smart. So it heated up at about 3 a.m.
Yeah, so
we needed to move.
Got the room ready, and we put candles on in the bedroom, and I don't know, all I wanted to do was lean forward. So I put like a pillow on my like buffet thing in the bedroom and just like leaned forward most of the time.
Yeah.
And I had a birth ball, and I tried doing like stuff on the birth ball, but I think because she was so low, it just was really uncomfortable bouncing on the ball.
Right.
And then I used the shower a little bit. So I was in the shower at like 4 a.m. We let the midwives know at 6 a.m. So I had a really gorgeous student midwife, Chloe. She was actually the one that got me into the continuity program. So I'm like super thankful to her because she's amazing. And my main midwife in the continuity program, it was her day off. So it was her partner that was on that night. So we called her at about 6 just to let her know that things were happening, but it wasn't like super time to go or anything yet. And from then I think I just put the TENS machine on at about 6. And
how did that work for you, the TENS machine?
To be honest, I'm not really sure. Like I feel like it may have worked, but I'm not sure if that was just because it distracted me because I could feel something else. Like all my contractions were just fully in the front of my pelvis, and then having something on my back was like just a different sensation. So like I wouldn't say it was like amazing, but I had it there just in case. I was too scared to take it off just in case, things got really painful. But when I did take it off, it didn't really feel that different. So I don't know.
It can be a bit hit and miss, the old TENS machine. Some women say, oh, it's amazing.
Maybe I just didn't have it placed in the right point or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so others say, I'm not sure that it made much of a difference, but yeah.
It gave me something to focus on, pressing the button and everything. But
and then there's always placebo that you can, bring
right,
into your court, because that can be helpful too.
Yeah. And yeah, so then at about 11 o'clock, my contractions were kind of like the 3 and 10 that they say to call the midwives for. So we gave her a call and she said she'd pop over and check me. So that was like a really nice thing to be able to have the midwife come to our house, and we didn't have to go in somewhere and just be told to leave.
Yeah,
that's so, yeah, so she came over and she was like really lovely, and she just watched a few contractions just to see what my demeanor was like and how it was going. I'd started throwing up by then as well, so like I think like things were really starting to ramp up. And she offered a cervical check, and I didn't know whether or not to have one or not, because I knew that sometimes they can interfere or slow things down, but I was actually a bit curious to know how far along I was. So I did have one, and I did ask to be told. And I was 6 centimeters and fully effaced. And so she's like, well, it's time to get ready and just, slowly make your way to the birth center.
That was good news.
Yeah, I was excited about that.
What Lauren's saying there is a really interesting point. Often when you come into the hospital, it's going to be the first thing that they're going to want to check is your effacement, and that comes through a vaginal examination. You don't have to say yes to those. You can say no, as Lauren was describing. The midwife gave her a choice. It is difficult to say no because there is a bit of pressure, because they like to take a bit of a baseline measurement as to where you're up to and to make sure you're progressing. And so there can be a bit of pressure to do it, but it is always a choice. One of the questions that is helpful to ask prior to the day, your carers in your antenatal visits, is under what conditions would you want me to have a vaginal examination? It's a really good question, because what it helps you to do is to identify that on the day, your options around saying no or yes, I agree to that. By asking that question prior to the day, you get a bit of an understanding of the landscape around where you're birthing and what their ideas are around why it might be important to take a baseline measurement. But even with that, you can still say no. So, because it can be a bit of a mind game to the old vaginal examinations. If Lauren had have got a measurement of 2 centimeters or something, she might have been very disappointed and deflated, but fortunately you got a number that you liked, so it worked in your favor.
Yeah, well, I think I really just wanted to know whether or not to make the decision to go in. So like having that, and that was the only check I got all the whole labor. So I had that one, and then we went in, and then I didn't have any more.
Yeah, that's good.
So then we slowly got ready and got to the hospital about an hour later, and hour and a half later, and they'd filled the bath for us, and it was just like, it's such a beautiful place at the birth center, like everything's so lovely. So like they had the room really dark, and they had fairy lights and salt lamps for us, and we had little like fake candles everywhere, and I'd taken in little like ultrasound photo of Orla and a little picture of me like on having my first breastfeed as a baby, and
oh wow,
they put that on a table in the bath, and they'd have beautiful like lavender sprinkled in the bath. Like I'll just always smell lavender now and think of Orla's birth, because it was just the most heavenly smell.
And that's beautiful. What a great
got
place.
there, and they did some checks on me and some checks on Orla's heart rate, and they said, all right, pop in the bath, and it was heaven, that water. Like it's the bath is like nature's epidural. It's just so beautiful.
Absolutely. It's good to just point out that sometimes the idea of the dim lights and the fairy lights and or candles or electric candles, it can all seem a bit hippie trippy, and why would you want that? But the environment that a mother births in actually has a very, very big impact on the way her body responds to birth. So if it's dim and intimate, and she's not under bright lights, and she doesn't have people talking over her or disrupting her mind and puts her in her thinking brain rather than in that lovely primal brain, the environment has a really big impact on that. And the birth centres and home births tend to be like that, not because they're hippies, but because that actually helps the labour.
Yeah.
Did you find that? Did you feel like that had a big impact?
Absolutely, yeah. I remember walking into the birth center and putting our stuff down, and I like put my hands on the bed there, and like I just started to cry because I thought this is so beautiful, and this is where my baby's going to be born, and all these people are here to help me, and this is like where we're meant to be.
Yeah, beautiful. So you got in the bath, you felt that made a big difference.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Like I think it definitely slowed the contractions down for a little bit, but I think it was good because it gave me time to just have a break. And, you know, Dan and I were sitting there kind of like making jokes for a little while. And, you know, I was chatting with like the midwives, and I had a beautiful photographer there with me as well. And we're just, you know, having a great time, just having chats and jokes and in between contractions.
Lovely.
And then the most amazing thing happened. Like I got up to go to the toilet, and then around the corner, my midwife, who was off, came in, and she said, "I've come in." And I was just like, this is the best news ever, because she's literally the best midwife in the world. So yeah, Nick arrived, and I was like, okay, everything is in place now. Like this is perfect.
Wow, that's dedication. She's coming on a day off. How beautiful.
Yeah, I was just everything was just so perfect.
So before we get into the next sort of phase of your labour, Dan's taken Orla off to probably get her settled, but what did Dan do that made a big difference to how you're experiencing labour up until that point?
So he would always have the drink bottle there for me. So he was constantly helping me like with drinks. He had like the combs and everything for me ready to go. Mostly he was doing like light touch on my back. He'd learnt all the like pressure points, but I didn't really like the pushing. I liked just the light touch.
Interesting,
yeah. So he did the light touch, and just like being there for me, like just, you know, cuddling and just like touching my face and just holding my hand. Yeah.
And that made a big difference to you, Lauren?
Yeah, just knowing that he was there, like in it with me, was really good.
Yeah, the emotional state of the mother is very important, and feeling safe, loved, and supported goes a long way to help.
There was even one point where, like, because in the bath I was on my hands and knees for like 90% of the time, because I just had that instinct to kind of lean forward, and I got pins and needles in my arms from like leaning on them. So he stood up on a stool and held my shoulders so that I didn't have to use the weight on my arms. And he literally held my body weight through like each contraction for like a few hours. So I'm sure he had a pretty bad bath after that.
Oh, that's love. Wow. So what was that second stage like?
It was long. So after being in the bath for a few hours, I'm not sure if I'm making this up, but I feel like I've heard it somewhere before that either just before or after transition, your contractions slow down to kind of give you a rest before pushing. Is that right?
It can. Absolutely. Yeah, it can.
Yeah. So I had this, like, everything slowed down for a while, and like I was kind of dozing in and out of sleep. And then, then I started throwing up again. And I think that's when like it was time to go. Because I started feeling like the urge to push around kind of like 5:30, 6 o'clock. And so my midwives were saying, like, if you feel that urge, just go with your body, just do what you feel you need to do. And so I started pushing, and then I was pushing and pushing and pushing, and not too much was happening. They could see the water, like the bag of waters was there and it was bulging. They could see her head, but it wasn't really coming out too much. And then after I started getting that urge to push, I was just pushing for a long time, and they said, maybe let's try a different position. So in the bath, like I flipped onto my back for a while and onto my side for a while. And still not a lot was happening. Like she was still just kind of like right there, but not coming out. And we realized I hadn't gone to the toilet in a long time. And so I tried to go to the toilet, but I just could not go to the toilet. She was so low that it was just like blocked, and her bag of waters hadn't broken yet. So I had said to my midwife, if you break the waters, will that help things move along? And she'd said, yes, but you didn't really want any interventions. So, you know, weigh up that option if you want me to do it or not. And so we decided not to. And I ended up getting up to the toilet after pushing in the bath for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I went to the toilet and still couldn't go to the toilet, but then the waters just popped on the toilet. So that happened anyway. And then they said,
So
well,
I'll just come in there. The benefit of letting the waters break of their own accord typically means that it can support like the pressure of the uterus shrinking, and then making it that area smaller for the baby. As that pressure comes down on the baby, it can then just promote that lovely tuck dive position, so the crown of the head is presenting. So that's typically why they don't like to break waters too early, to promote really good positioning of the baby. But in your case, she did get a little bit malpositioned, didn't she? Is that right?
A little bit, yeah. So the waters broke on the toilet, and then they decided rather than go back into the water, maybe they would try some positions on the bed. So I got up while they were getting the bed ready. There was a little bit of a moment of kind of one of those like crisis confidence moments, I guess, because the bed wasn't quite ready and they were getting things ready for like a little quick catheter to empty my bladder.
Yeah.
I was walking over to bed and I was about to have a contraction and I did not know what to do because I was walking and the bed wasn't ready. I'm like, oh, what do I do? And they're like, just squat. So I like squatted and did a few contractions like that. But then I got up on the bed and was like leaning over the back of the bed on my knees, and I was pushing like that for a long time. Excuse me. And it was just a long time, and it got to the point where rather than using my breath to push, they kind of coached me to do like a deep hold breath and push with holding my breath. And I think that was the hardest thing about the whole labor, was holding my breath. Like that need to like breathe in air was so strong. And I probably did that for about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And I feel like my head was going to explode because I was like holding my breath so much and pushing.
Yeah.
And I was also always really scared of tearing, and I was really scared of an episiotomy. But in that moment when I was like gasping for air, I was like, I don't even care if I tear right now. I need to push this baby out.
Yeah.
And so I was just pushing with all my might. But she was just crowning and she was just going in and out. And later on, they discovered that her head was asynclitic. So it was kind of like this, and she had her little hands up like this. So this part of her head was what was coming in and out.
Yeah, that's one of those mysterious things. You can't control that. That can just happen, can't it?
Yeah. So they told me, because I'd been pushing for so long, it was like 3.5 hours by this point. They said they had to get the doctors in to obviously watch what was happening. And the doctor said, look, she's right there. Like she was literally coming in like this far every time.
Yeah.
And then just kind of going back in. And they said, we think if we give you a little episiotomy, she'll come right out. And so I was like, absolutely, let's do it.
It's amazing how your opinion can change so much. Yeah. Did you feel the episiotomy?
Not at all. So I didn't even feel the local. The doctor was really great. She gave me the local and she said, okay, we'll try a couple of pushes first just in case. And then she cut, and I didn't feel it at all. And her head was born literally like next contraction. Then she did the beautiful like turn on her own, and then her body came out with the next contraction, and she was here, and it was awesome.
Wow. Describe that moment when you met her.
Well, the first thing, it was the most amazing feeling, her coming out, and then I was just like, relief. And then they were like, here's your baby. And I was just like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. And she was so warm and gooey. And it was just so good. And immediately the contractions stopped. All my nausea that I'd had throughout all of pregnancy stopped. Like pretty much like all the pregnancy symptoms were just like gone like that.
Wow. What a relief.
Yeah.
Did you had a bit of a post-birth high, is that right?
Oh, yes. So that feeling from when she came out for like the next 48 hours was just like euphoria. Like it was the best feeling in the world. I can't really even describe it. Everything was just so amazing. I guess that's just all those hormones just working like they should.
Yeah, that's the goal. Mother Nature wants you to be high and and want to have more babies, but also high in order to be able to manage that next phase, because it's very intense. The feeding starts and that's a whole new experience, and baby's sleeping, and, so there's a lot to deal with when baby lands. So you had that lovely hormonal high. How did you go with the placenta? You needed a bit of extra help?
Yeah, so about 45 minutes after I gave birth, like it still hadn't come. Then like it got to an hour and my midwife was doing the pressing to try to get it out, but nothing was working. So got up to the toilet to try to birth it, still wouldn't come out. So had to get the doctor back again. And yeah, she worked on it for about half an hour, 45 minutes herself. She was really like doing all the massage, and she was even like hands in trying to pull it out. And that's again where I use the breathing techniques, and they were doing all the pushing and the pulling. And yeah, so in the end, like I think it was maybe like an hour and a half after birth, it still hadn't come out, even though I'd had the injection to get the like just after she was born, I had the injection, because they said with pushing for so long that it's likely to have like a delayed placenta. So
yeah,
I even had the injection and it still wouldn't come out. But yeah, they finally got it out manually. It was pretty dicey. They were almost going to take me to theatre, but she just got it. But just as she got it, that's when I had a bleed. So
right,
I heard her say PPH, and luckily, like I'd done a lot of listening to different podcasts and reading, and so I knew that it meant postpartum hemorrhage. But I also knew I was in like the exact right place. Like I was in the perfect place for it. And my beautiful midwife, Nick, came up and she was so calm and lovely and was like, just letting you know, a couple more people are going to come into the room. It's nothing to worry about, just having a little bit of blood loss. And I was like, I don't care. I've got my baby. I'm happy. Like, do what you need to do.
You were in your hormonal high.
Yeah, I was just like, yeah, it's fine. You do your thing. So they put the cannula in and fixed the bleed up. And
yeah, and that's the best thing you can be. That's the best thing you can be, Lauren, is in that hormonal high and falling in love with your baby. Because while you're falling in love with your baby, you're promoting, you're releasing the most oxytocin that you can, and that's the hormone that's going to support the retraction of the uterus and the release of the placenta. So it was good you were in that state. And I think having the skill of your midwives, really maintaining that space of calm, not getting caught up about the fact that you're having a bit of a bleed, staying calm, then supports the safety of the whole process and the help that you needed to get that placenta out. That was really...
Yeah. And I always remembered one of the things you said in your course about one of the pregnant ladies who had a car crash, and she just knew to just stay calm so that the blood flow didn't just rush where it didn't need to go. And yeah. And yeah, I was just like, oh, I've got my baby, we're having a cuddle, like they're all looking after me, it's fine.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, fantastic. I'd love to ask Dan what it was like for him when he met the baby. Can you talk for him, because he's dealing with Orla now?
I think he was very relieved, because he doesn't do well with blood or things like that. And when he saw her crowning, I think he thought she had died, because her head was, how they kind of come out a bit pointy.
Yeah,
he thought, oh my God, she's pointy, like her head's been crushed, but I've got to stay calm for Lauren. So I think when she came out, I think he was finally like really relieved that she was okay.
Yeah, it can be hard for partners because they can see more than, and they're aware of what's going on in the room and the state of the other people, the health professionals around you. They take in a lot more information, whereas mothers are typically, when they're working with the birth, they're off into labour land and they're completely oblivious to a lot of things.
Yeah, I had my eyes closed for like almost the entire time. Like it wasn't until I got the photos back that I was like, oh, is that what everything looked like?
Wow. So what did you learn about yourself?
I think I learned that I will do anything for my baby. So like, yeah, I'll do anything for her. And I think that's why I was like so just really wanting to try to do it without having any pain meds, just because I didn't want anything to affect her.
Yeah.
And I think I also learned like that I was like, this is what I was meant to do. I was meant to be her mum. And yeah.
Life takes on a whole new quality, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's lovely. And is there anything you would say to a pregnant woman preparing for birth? Any sort of gifts of wisdom?
I'd just say, like, get your team around you, like get a really good team around you. In my preparation, I read Rhea Dempsey's Birth with Confidence.
Yeah.
And she talks about the different types of birthing, like willing women, and the different support circles of influence. And at one point in my pregnancy, this before I got into the birth center, I was just in the normal, like the normal birth suites area, and just getting like a different midwife and a different doctor every appointment. And I felt very lost. And when I read that in the book, I was like, okay, I need to find someone to be that person of like continuity.
Yeah.
That's what I remembered you said in your course, that like a student midwife is kind of like a free doula.
Yeah.
And there I reached out and got a student midwife, which was amazing. And yeah, I think getting someone that you know to like help you through is really important. And yeah, I'm just so thankful for my beautiful midwife, Nick, who just like looked after me and knew my wishes, and she was so protective the whole time. There was one point where, because I'd been pushing for so long, I think someone had suggested taking me down the corridor to the birth suites, and she said, I'm not letting Lauren give birth in the corridor, so like they can come here. And yeah, I'm just forever thankful for her for doing that.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Well, I think Lauren, Dan, and little Orla's story of Orla coming into the world is a beautiful example of what happens when women are safe, loved, and supported. Lauren had the best team she could have had around her, of people who were very invested in her being heard, listened to, and supported her wishes. She had a partner who absolutely nailed it, 100 out of 10 she gives him, and who knew exactly what his role was. And then even though little Orla's head was a little bit malpositioned, they were able to still get through a bit of an episiotomy, which wasn't even a concern. A little bit of a placenta that needed a bit of help to come out, and a bit of bleeding, but it doesn't matter what happens. It's the state of mind and the team that a woman has around her can get her through anything. And so Lauren and Dan's story is a beautiful example of, where birth can take us, and the preparation to get into that space, to move beyond fear and really start to believe in yourself, can go a long way to supporting the process of birth. So thank you everyone for listening. And once again, we'll have some more goodness for you next week. Lots of love. See you again. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support and grow into your role as a parent. Why not take advantage of a special gift for all pregnant women at transformyourbirth.com.au. Or if you have children, we have a gift for parents also.